Hello, I'm your host, Giselle Gamby, and this is the Intuitive Pull Podcast, where together we'll embrace the plans we did not make yet, unfold businesses and lives that are so much greater in wealth in all ways than any business or life plan could ever achieve. My wish is that you make intuition your most trusted advisor. So buckle up, get present, and let's go. Hello, everybody. It's good to be back. Second podcast episode for the week. I've been back, not even 2 weeks from Kenya. And it's been really intense. It's been really intense since I've returned from Kenya. I returned on Monday week ago in the afternoon, and I have been noticing, without a shadow of a doubt, actually, the intensity that is here. And I wanted to speak to that. I meditated earlier on in the week, and I was asking, in all honesty, the question that I was asking in meditation was, what the fuck with this intensity? Seriously, what the fuck with this intensity was my question. And I got some pretty cool answers. And it's Friday afternoon for me, and I feel very moved to record this episode before I close my week, because what I have become aware of is really powerful, and I want to share it. I want to share it with the Intuitive Pull listeners. So I know that the people that I'm working with, that I'm coaching, will resonate with what I'm saying, because this is very present for them. And for those who I'm not coaching but are part of this Intuitive Pull community, I'm sure, because you are part of this community, that this is also really relevant to you. So I share this with a lot of generosity and a lot of love, and my intention is that you will pull away from this episode with a lot of takeouts. What I would love is that there are some real aha moments, like, now I get it. Now I get it. So that is my intention for you. The headline for the week, for me, in observation of everything that is going on, is that love is being very rigorous at the moment. Love is being very, very rigorous at the moment. And love is being very provocative. And it's being provocative in two different ways. So let me speak to the first way. As I speak this out, see if this resonates for you. See if you can identify yourself in here. And if not, it may be in the identification of the second way that love is being provocative. So let's begin. So the first way that love is being provocative is that, and I'm going to use words that work for me, and you may change these words up for you, but I'm pretty sure you'll get what I mean. So if you've committed to living a life based in love, meaning that you're committed, have devoted your life to being one that's authentic, that has a depth of connection to self, to others, and to life, a depth of connection to spirit and source, and to what is intuitively moving through you. If you've committed to following your intuition and allowing that to direct the course of your life, then the provocation that you may be feeling is that you are being invited to continue to transform fear into love wherever limitation and a lack of freedom exists. Let me say that again. So if you've committed to living a life, an authentic life, one that has a depth of connection to self and others and to life, you have a relationship with source, with spirit. You follow the intuitive pull as best as you can, and you allow that to direct your life. Then what is happening is there is a provocation to continue to transform fear into love wherever limitation and lack of freedom exists. The expression that I used both when I facilitated the retreat in Croatia in September and Kenya in November is leave no stone unturned. And that is exactly what is happening. So as we leave no stone unturned, love is asking us to get radically honest with ourselves about where we're not taking full responsibility, where we're still in various degrees in blame and judgment, where we're still in perception of how we think we see things. Now, perception is an important word to speak about here because perception is not the truth. Perception is a false representation of how we see reality. And perception is always a perfect match, a beautifully dysfunctional marriage to our belief systems. So perception is always a perfect match. It always perfectly matches our belief systems, right? Our belief systems of being unworthy and unlovable, of not feeling good enough, not believing that we're good enough, of feeling like we don't belong, of feeling like we need to control ourselves and others, of feeling like we don't have the capacity, we just don't have enough time and energy and money and resources, belief systems of feeling insignificant and feeling like we're invisible, belief systems that we feel that we can't trust ourselves and others, can't really trust the world, belief systems around feeling powerless and that we don't have the capacity. These are all the belief systems that my favorite personality profiling system called the Enneagram, which dates back to the Sufi days. And having been in HR, I pretty much know a lot of the different personality profiling systems. The Enneagram states that there are 9 different personality types based on 12 different belief systems. And I've just mentioned most of those belief systems. So our perception, I'm pointing this out, putting a big exclamation mark around this. Our perception is always a match for our belief systems. So therefore, it is not an accurate representation of the truth. So love, in leaving no stone unturned, love in its rigorous nature at the moment, love that is provoking us to continue to turn or transform fear into love, where there is limitation and a lack of freedom. Love is asking us to get radically honest about where we're still in blame and judgment and where we are still living and committed to our perception of how we think we see things. So I've had quite a few examples of that in my conversations this week, and I thought I would give you some of those examples so that the wheels can start turning in your world, because I want to make this really relatable. So I had a discovery call with a person who has cancer, and it was a wonderful conversation and a very honest conversation. And I was very, very grateful that she was really so open with me from a place of humility. And she said quite a few times in this discovery call, the world's against me, even though I'm really trying hard. Having repeated that statement probably about 3 times during our call, that statement, that perception that perception, there's the word again, that perception felt like truth to her. And the reason why it felt like truth to her was because life was giving her a whole lot of evidence for that to be so. Evidence after evidence after evidence that the world's against her, even though she's trying really hard. Now, I was very direct in that discovery call, lovingly direct, because if that belief or that perception of reality that the world's against her, even though she's trying really hard, and she has cancer, in the world of cause and effect, what goes in comes out, in simple terms, you can probably imagine where that is going to end up. And yeah, I was radically honest with her about that. And that perception is more than likely created from a belief system that she can't trust herself, she can't trust others in the world. So that's a perception. It's critical. It's a critical perception, and it's critical to clean up her belief systems around her life, because, as I said to her, she's a powerful woman, and she will either powerfully create what she doesn't want, or she will powerfully create what she does. Another conversation I had was around betrayal and the experience of betrayal over and over again. Yet the irony was that he hadn't seen this theme of betrayal before, or said to me that he hadn't seen this theme of betrayal before, yet it had been brought up in our sessions. And it's interesting how the ego does not want our belief systems to be found out, to the point that it will create a blind spot around what's really going on, because the belief system that sits under that perception of betrayal, again, interestingly, is the belief system that you can't trust yourself, you can't trust others, and you can't trust the world. And of course, the ego believes that in order to keep us safe. It's a little warped, but the ego is well-meaning and well-intended in its smallness. And so, in no uncertain terms, process this week orchestrated in a way that there was no way. Well, let me continue. What I was about to say was there was no way that this betrayal, this perception about betrayal, would not be found out. That is true. And at the same time, he could have chosen to not find it out if he continued to be committed to that perception and to not taking full responsibility, which is not what happened. Thank God. The third example was simply a conversation that I was part of this morning on our Friday morning group calls. And it was a conversation around this person catching his own perception around capacity. So he is very much being called to up level, very, very much. There are some very clear directives. And yes, all of it isn't, we don't know how it's all going to play out. We don't have even the capacity to know how it's all going to play out. But certainly there are some pieces that are absolutely here to take inspired action around and to start grounding. And yet there was this resistance in him. And the resistance was, gosh, if I go down this way, this is going to encroach on my personal space. And so therefore there was resistance. Now the perception is about his capacity being limited. And where does that perception of capacity being limited be born from? Where does it come from? It comes from, again, isn't it interesting? So there's something in me talking to the belief system of I can't trust myself, I can't trust others, and I can't trust the world. It's the third time I've mentioned that belief system, and I didn't actually make that connection until I'm speaking it out loud. So what that is telling me is that that belief system is a belief system that wants to be transmuted. It wants to be freed in the Intuitive Pool podcast community. And I'll add to that, because that belief system of I can't trust myself, others, in the world has a double-barreled belief system that I'm invisible and that I'm insignificant. And if I go or run through the three people that I just spoke about as examples, yeah, that would be true of them as well. When they identify, of course, with those false, illusory belief systems. So there is something happening on this episode for this community. We're actually being asked to pay attention to those belief systems of distrust and invisibility and insignificance, because this community has some important things to do in the world. This community, and what matters to this community is, well, let's say it differently, matters to the world. What matters to this community matters to the world. Are you hearing me? What matters to this community matters to the world. And you are cancelling that out if you believe that you can't trust yourself, you can't trust others, you can't trust the world, and if you believe that you are insignificant and invisible. It cancels it out. And so here I am. Love is being very provocative through my body right now. It's actually being very rigorous in speaking to this community about these particular belief systems. You're being worked right now. Love is working you right now to clean up your act around these belief systems. So what are the perceptions that you have that you've believed to be true that are really caused by distrust, invisibility, and insignificance? There is some work for you to do here. I didn't know this was going to happen, but I now know there is some work for you to do. And just as I spoke to that lady who had cancer and said, if you do not clean that perception that the world's out to get you, we know where this story is going to end. I have a feeling for some of you, it's also critical, perhaps not in the context of death, but it is critical in the context of bringing what matters to you to the world. So I'm sounding very serious. I'm aware of that. And I really hope and trust that you're hearing me. So love is asking me to be very rigorous with you at the moment. I've heard the call and I've taken it. So we can pay attention, right? We can pay attention. We can be aware of our perceptions and of our belief systems, and we can, from that place of awareness, can consciously choose to clean up our act, yeah? And if we don't pay attention, if we remain committed to blaming and judging, if we remain committed to the perception of the way we think we see things, the divine architecture of life is going to force your hand to clean it up. Again, I know I'm sounding very serious in this episode, but that's just the way it works in the world of cause and effect. I've seen it, I've been coaching since 2002, since 2004. And this is how it happens. This is the way it rolls. When I was asking myself at the beginning of the week, what the fuck is going on? with all this intensity, and I saw what I've just shared with you, I also saw something else. And this kind of made it, all of that, make a whole lot of sense to me. So in 2021, the theme of nothing but miracles arrived. A miracle being a shift in perception from fear to love. And in 2022, the theme of overflow, more than, arrived. So of course, love is being so rigorous with us at the moment. Of course, love is being so provocative at the moment, because that's what chose us. If you're part of this community and you resonate with this podcast, then nothing but miracles and an overflow of miracles, miracle after miracle, transformation of fear to love, more transformations of fear to love, and more transformations of fear to love. That's what's on the cards. And so when I saw that, I was like, cool. This is really, really, really cool. And I am so grateful that we are being blessed with such generosity to live from love rather than fear. How can we experience the new? How can we experience what love calls us into and who love calls us into? If we operate from the same consciousness and if we operate from the same identity that created today and yesterday, it can't happen. It can't happen. How do we expand our consciousness? By transforming fear into love. By being radically appreciative for the process that we're on, for the divine architecture that loves us and moves us from fear into love. That's how we step up. That's how we step up. In terms of these, what you might call fractures, don't be afraid of the fractures, because what they are is that they are an opportunity for the light to come in. Yeah. So if there are fractures in your relationships, there's fractures in your health, there's fractures in your sense of self and your sense of value, don't fear them, because they're all an opportunity for the light to come in. And how can we allow the light to come in with ease and grace? You know, how can grace do the heavy lifting here? Humility. Humility is the place to go. I wrote to somebody today and I said something like, the peace is about humility. And I meant to write PIECE. The peace, this peace that I'm speaking to is about humility, but I actually wrote PEACE. And it wasn't an accident, I realized, because there is peace in humility. There is peace in humility. There is peace in being on your knees. There is peace in being open, and we don't have to even suffer being on our knees, yeah? It might feel really uncomfortable for a moment, but the moment we go to that place of humility, there is peace, and there's this sense of trust that God or love has our backs. There is peace in humility. And it's a different experience to the experience of being committed to your perception. So if you're committed, if you're defending, A Course in Miracles talks about the power of being defenseless, the power of defenselessness. I check myself when I feel like I'm defending myself. I know that I'm in the blame and judgment triangle if that's where I'm orientating from. So when you're committed to your perception creates disconnection. It creates disconnection from the truth of what is really going on and from the truth of what is calling you and calling you to become. and it creates disconnection with others. When we are committed to our perceptions, only conflict can exist. And yes, we might get to the other side, but we get to the other side through a whole lot of mess. And so I just remind you that humility is the place to go, and it can even be messy in humility for a moment, but just for a moment. How else can we hold those fractures as opportunities for the light to come in with grace and allow grace to do the heavy lifting? Well, we trust and we surrender to the divine architecture that is working on our behalf. See, things may not come in the way that you think that they should come or that you would prefer them to come. But when we trust in the universal mind is far more powerful and far more generous than our own limited minds. Now, that is how love is being provocative in the first way. The second way love is being provocative is that if there is vision to ground and the new to be born, and there is enough to ground and enough to be born, it might not be the whole vision. But if there is some vision to ground and there is some of the new to be birthed, to bring to reality, it wants to be acted upon now. Not from a place of force. No, not from a place of struggle and hardship and push. Absolutely not. But it is asking us, love is asking us to follow those intuitive pulls and to have trust that when we just take that next step, that more will unfold than we have the capacity to know right now. I had this experience with Michelle, my amazing co-facilitator and retreat organizer in Kenya. People were off having some time to themselves in process. And Michelle said, let's have a conversation, just the two of us, to talk about our divine assignments. And the next minute, somebody came and said, can I sit with the both of you and you support me around the assignment that we were giving them at the time? And so we did that and we loved it. We absolutely loved it. And then the next couple, well, not next couple, and then the next person came and then the next person came. And basically, Michelle and I had 2-on-1s with everyone other than one person who we had a whole lunch table in service to them. And Michelle and I loved it. A couple of months ago, we had an intuition, wouldn't it be amazing to have a Michelle and Giselle mastermind? And we let that go. We didn't know what that meant, but we certainly felt the joy of it. After we had these 2-on-1s, which we didn't plan on having, we said, maybe this is the Giselle and Michelle mastermind. And so we are moving forward with that. And I'm just giving you that as an example, is that there's vision. The vision came to have a mastermind a few months ago. Then what was not in the plan was for Michelle and I to have these 2-on-1s. And then we had 9 of them and we absolutely loved it. And then we saw, okay, this is partly how this mastermind works. And it's for graduates. It's for graduates of our programs. So graduates of the Catalyst Mastermind, graduates of Michelle's program. So if any of you are listening, this mastermind, sorry, I should say, if any graduates are listening, this mastermind is the Radical Generosity Mastermind, which is the theme for 2023. So speak to me or speak to Michelle if you want to check in on that. It's going to be very, very cool and radically generous in what it creates. And I want to speak finally to this theme of radical generosity. Because the theme of next year is radical generosity, of course, love is being provocative and rigorous for those who have enough to ground the vision or the beginnings of the vision and to birth the new. Of course, love is being rigorous. And in the spirit of radical generosity, think about your lives being a sacred ecosystem. A sacred ecosystem. When we were in Kenya, we saw the sacred ecosystem of nature, where each animal had its perfect or played its perfect role in its perfect sequence. It was incredible. Our lives are the same. We have a sacred ecosystem. And when one person moves from intuition and from calling, then that has a ripple effect into somebody else's life. And that person moves from intuition and calling, and then that has a ripple effect on somebody else's life. And before you know it, you can see how all these separate pieces all fit perfectly together. But you can't see that on the outset. You can't see it. You can only see it once the unfolding occurs, and more unfolding in this sacred ecosystem that is radically generous. But you have to ground. You have to ground what has shown up and has enough clarity to move with. Love is being very rigorous about that. And again, I'm being direct that should you not ground that, that idea will pass by. The energy of that idea will pass by. Yeah. And then that will have an impact on you and on your own sense of certainty. So I hope you have heard the call. I hope this episode has moved you to move, whether it be to clean up or whether it be to ground. And I'm very much looking forward to hearing the outcome of this episode. As you know, I love receiving messages, so please do that. Details are in the show notes as to how you do that. Have an incredible week. Thank you for being here, and ciao, ciao. If you enjoyed this episode or previous episodes, I would so appreciate you sharing the love and letting your family, friends, and colleagues know about this podcast, because the only way that it's going to get out there is if we use word of mouth, the good old word of mouth. So I have my hands in appreciation for you, for those who have already been sharing the love. And should this part of the podcast inspire you to share amongst your network, I really appreciate you. Also, I've been saying that I am also returning to my first love, which is writing. So if you would like to receive me in your inbox every week, there is a link in the show notes where you'll be able to subscribe, and I look forward to writing to you. Have an incredible week. Thank you.